Corruption, a pervasive issue plaguing nations worldwide, undermines trust in institutions and impedes progress. Today, we delve into the top 10 most corrupt countries, shedding light on the magnitude of this global challenge. We'll be referencing Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, CPI, considering factors like bribery, embezzlement, and accountability to determine this ranking. Number 10. Equatorial Guinea. Despite being one of Africa's wealthiest nations per capita due to its vast oil reserves, Equatorial Guinea struggles with pervasive corruption that deprives its citizens of essential services and economic opportunities. The country's oil wealth has not translated into meaningful improvements in the lives of its people, as corruption siphons off resources meant for public welfare. Transparency and accountability mechanisms are lacking, with power concentrated in the hands of a small ruling elite. This lack of accountability enables widespread embezzlement, bribery, and nepotism, further entrenching the cycle of corruption. As a result, Equatorial Guinea ranks among the most corrupt countries globally, hindering its potential for sustainable development and exacerbating socio-economic inequalities. Number 9. Libya. Political instability and conflict have created fertile ground for widespread corruption in Libya, hindering its transition to stability and prosperity. The absence of effective governance structures and rule of law has allowed corruption to flourish across various sectors, including politics, business, and public services. Bribery, embezzlement, and favoritism are commonplace, undermining public trust and confidence in state institutions. Moreover, the lack of transparency and accountability exacerbates grievances among the population, fueling further discontent and instability. Despite its vast oil wealth, Libya continues to grapple with economic challenges exacerbated by corruption, further deepening the country's humanitarian crises and impeding efforts towards sustainable development. Number 8. Haiti. Haiti, a country already burdened by natural disasters and political turmoil, is further crippled by systemic corruption that exacerbates poverty and undermines recovery efforts. Corruption permeates every level of society, from government institutions to private enterprises, hindering effective governance and impeding socio-economic progress. The diversion of public funds, bribery, and nepotism are rampant, depriving citizens of essential services such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Furthermore, weak rule of law and lack of accountability perpetuate impunity among corrupt officials, reinforcing the cycle of corruption. As a result, Haiti struggles to break free from the cycle of poverty and instability, with corruption serving as a formidable barrier to rebuilding and development. Number 7. Burundi. Burundi faces significant challenges stemming from deep-seated corruption, exacerbating its socio-economic woes and hindering governance and development efforts. Corruption is pervasive across government institutions, business sectors, and civil society, eroding public trust and confidence in the state. Embezzlement, bribery, and nepotism are commonplace, diverting resources meant for public welfare and undermining the delivery of essential services. The lack of transparency and accountability perpetuates impunity among corrupt officials, further entrenching the culture of corruption. As a result, Burundi struggles to attract investment, spur economic growth, and improve living standards for its citizens, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and instability. Number 6. North Korea. Transparency is virtually non-existent in North Korea, where corruption is intertwined with authoritarian rule, perpetuating oppression and poverty. The country's centralized and secretive governance system enables widespread corruption, with power concentrated in the hands of a select elite. Kim Jong-un's regime maintains tight control over all aspects of society, stifling dissent and accountability mechanisms. Bribery, embezzlement, and favoritism are pervasive, further enriching the ruling elite at the expense of the general population. Moreover, the lack of access to information and independent oversight makes it challenging to gauge the full extent of corruption in the country. As a result, North Korea remains one of the most closed-off and corrupt regimes globally, with ordinary citizens bearing the brunt of its oppressive policies. Number 5. Yemen. Yemen's ongoing conflict has created fertile ground for corruption, exacerbating humanitarian crises and hindering efforts to rebuild shattered institutions. The breakdown of governance structures and rule of law has enabled corruption to thrive across various sectors, from politics to business and public services. Embezzlement, bribery, and nepotism are rampant, diverting resources meant for humanitarian aid and development projects. The lack of transparency and accountability further compounds the problem, eroding public trust in state institutions and exacerbating grievances among the population. As a result, Yemen struggles to address the root causes of its crises, with corruption exacerbating socio-economic inequalities and impeding efforts towards peace and stability. 4. Venezuela. Political mismanagement and economic instability have fueled widespread corruption in Venezuela, exacerbating its humanitarian and economic crises. The consolidation of power under the Maduro regime has enabled corruption to flourish across government institutions and state-owned enterprises. Embezzlement, bribery, and cronyism are pervasive, diverting resources away from public welfare and essential services. Moreover, the lack of transparency and accountability mechanisms reinforces impunity among corrupt officials, further entrenching the cycle of corruption. As a result, Venezuela's once prosperous economy has spiraled into chaos, with hyperinflation, shortages of food and medicine, and widespread poverty affecting millions of Venezuelans. The deep-rooted corruption exacerbates the country's challenges, hindering efforts towards recovery and sustainable development. Number 3. South Sudan. Corruption undermines stability and development in South Sudan, hindering progress and exacerbating the country's humanitarian crises. The young nation, plagued by years of conflict and political instability, struggles with systemic corruption that permeates every level of society. Embezzlement, bribery, and nepotism are rampant, diverting resources away from public services and exacerbating poverty and inequality. The lack of transparency and accountability perpetuates impunity among corrupt officials, further eroding public trust in state institutions. Moreover, corruption exacerbates ethnic tensions and undermines efforts towards peace and reconciliation. As a result, South Sudan continues to grapple with challenges of governance, security, and development, with corruption serving as a formidable obstacle to progress. Number 2. Syria. The Syrian conflict has bred corruption, exacerbating the suffering of its people and hindering post-war reconstruction efforts. Amidst the devastation of war, corruption has flourished, permeating every aspect of society and undermining efforts to rebuild shattered institutions. Embezzlement, bribery, and cronyism are widespread, diverting resources meant for humanitarian aid and reconstruction projects. The lack of transparency and accountability further compounds the problem, eroding public trust in state institutions and exacerbating grievances among the population. Moreover, corruption exacerbates socio-economic inequalities and perpetuates cycles of poverty and instability. As a result, Syria struggles to address the root causes of its crises, with corruption hindering efforts towards peace, stability, and sustainable development. Number 1. Somalia. Topping the list is Somalia, where corruption permeates every level of society, exacerbating poverty, instability, and humanitarian crises. Decades of conflict and political turmoil have created fertile ground for corruption to flourish, with weak governance structures and lack of effective law enforcement enabling widespread impunity. Embezzlement, bribery, and nepotism are rampant, diverting resources away from essential services and exacerbating socio-economic inequalities. The absence of transparent and accountable institutions further compounds the problem, eroding public trust and confidence in the state. Moreover, corruption fuels clan-based conflicts and undermines efforts towards peace-building and state-building. As a result, Somalia remains one of the most fragile and least developed countries globally, with corruption serving as a significant barrier to progress and stability. The prevalence of corruption in these countries underscores the urgent need for concerted efforts to promote transparency, accountability, and good governance. By addressing corruption, we can foster equitable societies and pave the way for sustainable development worldwide.